Excellent. Thanks for that introduction. So, hi everybody. My name's Luke Sleeman. You might have seen a bit more of me at the GDG than at CocoaHeads. I'm a principal developer working for a company called Itty Bitty Apps, and for the past couple of years, I've been contracted out to work with ANZ, helping them deliver their new ANZ Plus application. And tonight, I'm going to talk about continuous delivery at ANZX, the program that's built this application. And because continuous delivery sounds dreadfully dull, I've subtitled it How We Go From a Pull Request to Out in a Customer's Hands in 5 Days. Before I jump in and start talking about continuous delivery, I wanted to provide a little bit of context. For more than the past 2.5 years, we've been working with ANZ to help them build out their new ANZ Plus application. And it's got all kinds of exciting features, both from a technical and a user perspective. All the way back in May, Rob Amos, aka Bok, one of the CocoaHead regulars, presented on its architecture here at CocoaHeads Melbourne. So if you want to hear all about the architectural principles that underpin the app, such as offline data cache with idempotent synchronization, unidirectional data flow, and eventual consistency, I'd really encourage you to head off to the CocoaHeads video channel there and watch the presentation. It should give you a lot more background on what we are about. Since that talk, we've hit some really exciting milestones, such as more than $500 million of funds under management and over 40,000 customers, with thousands more joining every week. We've also released a stream of new features, such as increased daily payment limits, Google Pay integration, BPay, PayID, dynamic CCVs, and so on. Delivery is rapid. On average, it's 2.5 days from a pull request being raised until it's merged in. Both of our apps are being released automatically to the stores twice a week. So far, we've had over 260 releases of both the Android app and the iOS app. And the average time from a pull request being merged until it's out in a customer's hands, managing that money on a real phone, is 3 days. So when you add it all up, on average, and there definitely are some outliers out there with RPRs, but on average, it's 5 business days from a PR being raised until it's out in the customer's hands, running on the phones, but, big caveat, hidden behind feature flags, of course. Now, we didn't start out the program with a grand plan to hit these kind of numbers. Our initial goals in terms of delivery were a lot more modest. We just wanted to try releasing the app once a fortnight and see what broke, and then fix that up, and then try and go a little bit faster and see what broke next. And by continually iterating and focusing on what was holding us back and slowing us down, and what was breaking when we tried to go faster, we've settled on 4 pillars of continuous delivery. These are the things that allow us to move quickly. Firstly, we try and automate everything that we can. And there are 2 main areas that we focus on. Firstly, we use automation to provide quality assurance and security. So we have a whole bunch of automated unit tests, UI tests. We do a release archive test. So on every branch, we build the complete version of the production app that would go out and be deployed. There's a whole bunch of linting, compliance checks, SonarQube, Black Duck, check marks. These are all security checking things. And we perform automated compliance checks using a tool called Sizzle. But secondly, we also use automation to remove repetitive processes, which increases our speed and reduces mistakes. So we auto-generate release notes. And we also use automation to produce many of the artifacts required by ANZ's change management process. Our second pillar is no long-lived branches. Some of you in the audience may be very familiar with this diagram. It's called Git flow, and it's a popular strategy for branching using Git, including things like release branches, hotfix branches, and so on. and we don't use it. We find it adds a lot of complexity, particularly around things like cutting release branches, backporting bug fixes, and so on. And we find it isn't suitable for our rapid continuous delivery process. Instead, we have many short-lived branches, all of which get merged back into main. Each branch should only be open for a few days, and it should contain a small, manageable chunk of code which gets merged via that pull request. So how can we be continually merging our code back into main and then shipping it out directly to our users when it's out on these phones managing real money? How can we do this safely? To do this, we make extensive use of feature flagging. When a new feature is built, it's hidden behind a feature flag. And we use a product called LaunchDarkly, which you can see there on this slide, to manage all of the flags and remotely enable them when a feature is ready to be released. Hiding new code behind feature flags allows us to merge and ship without that fear that incomplete features will be exposed to our users. To allow us to enable features for testing by developers or our QA people, we also have a companion app, which you can see there on the right, which we install alongside the developers. Testers install alongside the main ANZ Plus application. And it allows us to override those flag values and enable features under development. On iOS, all of this is done using a framework called Vexel, developed again by Bock, which he has presented here before at CocoaHeads. All of this feature flagging means that releasing new features is now decoupled from deploying builds into the app stores. And we've been able to move a lot of heavier processes around things like legal approvals and marketing and so on, are shifted from when we deploy the app to when a feature flag is enabled. And by allowing us to turn those feature flags on and off at any time, it removes some of the stresses and pressures on the developers. They're not rushing really hard to get a feature done for this particular month's release or so on. We can turn features on when they're ready. Our last pillar of continuous delivery is consciously shifting as many of our processes to the left so that they happen earlier. In particular, we've focused on quality assurance and testing because we find the earlier that you find issues and bugs, the simpler they are to fix. Shift left also means that you'll see a lot of things happening in our pull requests. The first thing that you notice when looking at our pull requests is lots of automated testing and quality gates. All those things like our unit tests, our UI tests, the linting, the checking for security issues get run on every pull request before it's merged. Secondly, we also have a lot of manual testing. Each pull request should come with a test plan which is written by the developer raising that pull request, often with input from their QA person. The test plan is typically executed by the other developers who are reviewing that pull request. Having our developers run the test plan means that they can look at the code from many perspectives, including, most importantly, what it actually does when you run it. Because I find personally too often when I'm looking at pull requests, we tend to focus on the style of the code alone. It can be really hard to see the forest for the trees there. The test plan in the pull request helps counteract this tendency by forcing people to focus on what the code actually does when you run it, and also helps us to find problems early. Detailed reviews also require a lot of context, so don't bother trying to squint or read this stuff. You're not meant to be reading it, but each pull request will have an extensive description, which often includes things like screenshots and videos. And all of this leads to a lot of discussion in pull requests. And we don't necessarily, it does have a limit, but we don't necessarily see this as a bad thing at all. Code is at the core of what we are doing. So it makes sense that an engaged team will spend a lot of time discussing it. Pull requests are about how we learn and grow as a team and how we ensure the code that we're about to deploy is correct. So every time somebody writes a comment on a pull request, not only does the product get better, but we also grow and learn as a team. So you might all be thinking like, wow, I bet all of this stuff takes a lot of time. Setting up all of that automation, all of those pull request reviews, that conversation, that discussion, which gets us to a bit of a bonus pillar, or maybe it's more of an underlying principle. Go slow to go fast. And you might be thinking, hold on a second, Luke. Don't you go fast to go fast? Haven't you got that round backwards? The problem with trying to speed up and go fast is it doesn't get you very far. If you want to go faster and cut things out, there's always some meetings you can cut out and a few processes you can cut back on. But if you try and hurry up and go fast, you really quickly run out of those low-hanging fruit. And then you start doing things like cutting corners on your code or putting off investment in automation. You start shortchanging your pull requests and you just get them approved with, looks good to me. And you think to yourself, look, I'll fix all of that up when the pressure is off. Except somehow that pressure never really does come off, does it? And all of those corners you've cut keep on adding up. And suddenly it turns out that you're actually going really slow. So we don't do this. Instead, we deliberately go slow to go fast. This is all about investment. Every time somebody slows down their work, by taking the time out to automate something, it speeds all of us up. Every time we stop and invest our time in having a detailed discussions in those pull requests, it speeds the whole team up. And these investments have a way of compounding over time. This is not an easy way of going fast, but it's a powerful one that gives you a significant advantage. So if you take one thing away from my talk tonight, I hope it is this principle: go slow to go fast. Do we have any questions? I'm happy to take them either here in person or in Slack in the Meetup channel.
A bit of a silly question, but did any customer ever complain that there are too many updates?
Do customers ever complain there are too many updates? Oh, that is a really good question. I don't think we've quite hit that point yet, but it is true that you can push things out too much and users get sick of the constant app updates downloading in the background. I think it's a bit of a balance between deploying things frequently to the store and just overwhelming them with those updates. I know on Android, a lot of that stuff tends to happen very much in the background now when your phone's charging overnight. On iOS, does it sort of push you pretty aggressively and let you know when updates are happening?
Yeah, there's an automatic update process as well. It's kind of janky, but it's there.
Yeah. Any further questions?
You talked about the short releases and pushing features, and I know at least one project that I've worked on, and I think you might have worked on it at the same time, where Apple actually said you can't use this framework unless it's a released feature. When that eventually comes up for you, do you see a way that you're, like, how would you see something like that problem being fitted into your process? Now I'm really out of my depth with answering that question, because I am not an iOS developer and I am not around the iOS side of things. We do have a few there in the audience. Amy, do you...
No comment. But I did have another question to move on from that. So, with the team as large as ANZ is, how do you keep everyone on board with the process and sort of satisfy all of the different requirements going on?
Ooh, that is a great question. It's like, how do we keep everybody on board with the process and satisfy all of the requirements that are going on? It's really, really hard. Really, 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 really hard. I think there's two aspects of that question to really break it down. One part of it is the engineering team and the developers and keeping everybody on the same page there around what we're doing. And there's a lot of things we've got in that space to try and keep everybody aligned. Part of this is all automated. Like, we lean heavily into automation. So things like having all of those checks run on your pull request, using the same pull request templates and so on are kind of not like opt out. It's just going to happen by default for everybody. Part of this is sort of a self-correcting thing that we have within the culture at ANZ, where if somebody's like moving away from this, other developers will talk to them and explain things and pull them up, and people get rewarded for the team's very good at acknowledging good work and calling out things that we think really fit well with our vision for what we're doing. We've also got very extensive documentation, and we're also very keen to change and update our process as well. We need to be continually evolving and growing and changing. This thing that we got here didn't come fully formed into being. It only happened because we continually looked at what was holding us back. So if developers within the team are seeing things that like aren't right or causing problems or could be done better, that's great. We should bring it up and discuss it and find ways that we can move quicker. So we've got all of those things going on within the engineering team. But the mobile engineers also work within a larger team at ANZX. There's lots of other things going on apart from the mobile app being built. And getting that alignment across the other areas of the business so that they can understand what we're doing and why we're doing it has also been a really, really challenging thing, and something that's still an ongoing piece of work. The ANZX program at the moment has I think over 900 people in it, so getting them all on the same page is hard. Ultimately, it comes down to just going out and having lots and lots and lots of conversations with people, but also asking our engineers and developers to be advocates for this process so that when it comes up in conversations with product owners and so on, that they can explain why we're doing it and how it fits together. Renaud?
You said that a PR tends to sit for like a couple of days before it's reviewed. How do you ensure that? Is it cultural, or are there processes that say, you know what, if a PR sits languishing over 3 days, it becomes like a high priority target? So how do you ensure that that PR doesn't become lost for like a month and nobody wants to review it? Because that's common.
Yeah, lots of ways. It's a continual problem. One of the metrics that we're tracking and looking at, and I know Kira's been looking at very closely, is the time to first comment, how long it takes from a PR's raised till somebody's actually looked at it and commented on. And that is one thing that we want to get low, because as developers, there's nothing worse than pouring your heart and soul into this code, putting it out there to the world, and just absolutely getting crickets. Although pull requests have been a continual challenge because a lot of things go on in there, and many of us are used to smaller teams where it is really quick and easy to get a pull request merged in, and we are getting good to me reviews. And people don't realize that while our pull request process takes a lot longer and is a lot more extensive, the overall process that it sits within of going from the code is raised to on a customer's phone is much shorter and faster, and part of that is because we're investing so much effort into the pull requests. But given that, we still want to reduce developer friction. It's not enough to say, oh, it's just going to take a while, that's the way things are. So there's a lot of things that we can do in that area. One thing that we've done on the Android team and we're trialing on iOS is auto-assigning pull requests. We talk a lot about how we can get better at pull requests, both from a raising pull requests and a reviewing them perspective. We have many catch-ups across both the iOS and Android team each week, where one of the regular agenda items is, are there any pull requests there that need to be looked at? Let's go through the queue. We use labels to give things like high priorities, and another area that seems to have paid off really well is every morning we'll have a casual huddle in Slack where we go through and do paired review or like a shared review of pull requests. So if your PR isn't getting any attention or you want extra input, you can always bring it along to the huddle or kick off that huddle and ask other people to come along and review it, and in turn review other people's work as well. Got a question over at the back there?
Yeah, I apologize if the question's already been answered, but I guess my question is on the other side of how do you make sure pull requests don't stay around for too long? Like if it's been longer than 2 days, 3 days, and you've got a lot of pull requests, I can imagine like just gets lost and like a month later, or near the bottom of the interface, it's like, oh, it's random.
Yeah, things languishing at the bottom of the queue can be a problem. Ultimately, it comes down to two things, right? It comes down to the developer who raised the pull request being responsible for going out there and engaging the rest of the team, and if it is languishing, bringing it up in all of those processes, bringing it to the huddles, raising it up to other people asking for reviews. But it also comes down to the team and the team as a whole to make sure those things don't happen. So one of the things that we do is when we get together as a team weekly, we look through the queue occasionally and we will check what's going on down the bottom. Or sometimes the queue size does grow too large and we'll get together and have a conversation about it and say, what's leading to this? Why are there things languishing down at the back? How can we do better? And it's all about that process of continually improving and looking at where you can do better and what's holding you back. So to answer your question, how do we make sure things don't languish? Sometimes they do, but ultimately it comes down to the dev and it comes down to the team to notice that, to self-correct and make sure it doesn't happen again. Any further questions? I guess not. If there are any in the Slack channel, I'll take them in there. Thanks a lot, everybody.